This is Adam Watson,
and Elias Spainhower.
And you're listening to the Darkslinger Mafia podcast. So this episode is going to be a little bit different than what we standardly do. We're going to be taking a look at Christmas comics this episode, talking about some favorites, have a few special guest stars lined up. Elias, why don't we start with you? You read any holiday comics?
Yes, I have. I actually read about it in a previous comic, but then I realized I got the Christmas episode, or the Christmas issue that day, and it was Lobo.
Okay, what's the name of that? Do you remember?
I don't really remember.
Is it Lobo's Paramilitary Christmas Special?
I think so.
Okay.
I was just trying to think of the one before it too, but I don't know. Lobo usually just has Lobo on the front. I don't really.
Right.
No,
yeah, and they did like
numbers.
the ongoing series, and then they did a bunch of mini series too.
Ah.
So and like one shots and stuff like that. Because there's like Blazing Chain of Love.
Oh, okay.
And then the Paramilitary Xmas Special. I think is what it said.
That was awesome.
And then there was like Lobo's Back, where all the covers just had Lobo drawn faced away from the reader.
That's it?
Yeah. There was like something different on his back for each and every issue. But it was actually a pretty good little gag because it was like just something different on his back. And I think the very last cover he was all of a sudden a woman. I don't know if I ever read those, so I'm not entirely sure why he all of a sudden turned into a woman in the last issue. But
would that be like Lebo or
something like that? I don't know. I guess we'll have to read it at some point to know.
Oh yeah.
But anyway, so is this the only Christmas comic you've read so far?
I do believe so. Most of the time, I'm like when I pick up stuff at shows, I'm usually looking for like a small run of things where I can read through 4 or 5 and they all make sense because they're all kind of together.
Right.
But Lobo is one that you can literally just kind of pick up at any point. And they'll like kind of fill you in on the stuff that you need to know, but they'll just
Right.
But no, I don't think I've read any other Christmas specials.
Okay, so what's the gist of what happens in this one?
So it starts out. So I think it started out with like the Easter Bunny approaching them, and all the other seasonal creatures are like Santa's got like this monopoly going on. He's describing him as like a pit boss, and like all of his elves are actually like little like. They're like little, like, I don't know,
mafioso type.
Yeah,
guys.
mafioso type. But they're also like kind of his slaves too. So they're like, and it was just hilarious, just the way it started setting up. It was just like the Easter Bunny and all the other characters are like want to hit on Santa, like. And I'm not too sure how they coerced him, or maybe if Lobo just had some sort of something with Santa anyway, like.
So he ends up battling Santa, right?
So he ends up. I think this is the first time I actually saw Lobo's bike too.
Okay.
And that's when I found out that I'm like, holy crap! I used to have this character in my big box of random toys that I had.
Oh, did you have the action figure of him?
Yeah, like on the bike. So I like knew he looked familiar. But I had no idea who he was, and like I just remember like this. All of a sudden I saw his bike and I'm like, oh my god, this is that bike from the toy box when I was like hi to a grasshopper.
Yeah, he had a really distinct looking motorcycle.
Oh yeah, badass. Anyway, so he blasts off to Santa's world or realm. I think it's world. So like he's not located on the North Pole. He's got his own like planet where his factory is. And Lobo just shows up. The elves are like shooting them. They have like candy cane swords, and they're shooting them, I think, with pop guns, like with corks and shit. Lobo just tears through everything, and then finally Santa realizes what's going on and confronts him. And I think Santa had like they were going to go with guns, but they tossed the guns aside and decided to do it like a knife fight. And Santa, I think, had like 2 kookeries, and it was a brutal fight. Lobo, like, kind of looked like he was losing in places, but for the most part, he was just owning Santa. And, totally kills Santa. Just like, oh, man, I wish I could remember some of the quotes he said, because they're just funny as hell. Yeah, so Lobo killed Santa. It was, but it was great, because, like, the previous one I read was, like, mentioning all of Lobo's, like, backstory, and, like, because they were after him for some reason. I think he messed up his like favorite eating joint or something, and they just took off, and like they're all like recollecting all these stories about him, and it just mentioned that, like, yeah, he killed Santa Claus and blah blah blah, and then the next comic that I happened to pick up was that issue, and I just thought that was really cool.
So would you recommend this comic?
Yes, both the Christmas special and actually just Lobo comics in general. I don't know which ones like went south or if they did, but so far every one I've read has been really good.
I read very few Lobo comics when I was a kid. I read more comics where he just appeared as a special guest star or something like that. You know?
What kind of comics would he just randomly appear in?
He randomly appeared in all kinds of comics. He appeared in an issue of Superman that I remember one of my brothers got because they ran up to me and they wanted to show me how Lobo knocked Superman down because he kicked Superman in the testicles. and so you had that one, and then like Wizard Magazine, which, do you know what that is?
I believe so.
Okay, when I was a kid, Wizard Magazine was the guide to comics. Came out every month.
Okay.
And it was like comic sized. It was always talking about like this or that's going on in the industry. It mainly focused on like Marvel or DC, and it had a price guide in the back that you could see what prices were on everything. The price guide, of course, got a little bit antiquated as soon as eBay came out.
Oh yeah, I bet.
In its terms of the fandom magazines, it was more pop culture driven right from the get go than like the Comics Journal or any of those. But Wizard was a lot of fun when I was a kid, up until the point the comic movies started coming out.
Yeah.
And then they switched the format to like a large size magazine size, like regular magazine, tabloid size, I think is what they call that.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, like, every cover went from showing like Lobo or Wolverine or Superman or, something like that, Spawn, to being Hugh Jackman as Wolverine, Tobey Maguire as Spider-Man.
Oh, wow.
And not every single cover, but enough of them, and it just shifted all the focus over to the comic movies, not the comic books, and
price guides in the back probably just disappeared, although it's antiquated anyway.
The price guide was still there, but but like they tried varying a few things towards the end. Like they came out with some specials. They came out with specials the entire career of Wizard, but like they started up more towards the end that were like indie edge that I picked up. Oh, I'm an independent comic creator. I should probably look at this. And who do they have featured in it but the Transformers, Buffy the Vampire Slayer? And I'm like, I don't think you guys understand independent comics.
No.
So nowadays, Wizard is doing the Wizard conventions.
Oh, okay.
So the magazine's kaput, but they are still doing the conventions, at least for now.
Cool.
So anyway, Lobo was talked about in those comics a lot. And then like in Marvel vs. DC, the 4-issue miniseries event that came out when I was like 14, so I'm going to say 1994, I think is when that came out.
Okay.
They had Wolverine and Lobo fight in that.
That'd be pretty brutal.
And then they had the Amalgam comics that took a Marvel and a DC character and made them into one character. And they did like a one-shot that was supposed to be set somewhere in their timeline, right? And so like they did Batman and Wolverine as Dark Claw. So he's like a character that worked really well because he's basically like Batman with super senses and claws, right?
Yeah, but what throws me off on that though is like Batman's all about not killing people and Wolverine's about killing people.
Yeah. Like, I don't remember which one
would take over. Like,
yeah, I think it was the no killing.
But
Batman
with claws,
type.
you're just chopping guns at that point.
Right. But I don't know if it was in the first wave of Amalgam or the second, I don't remember. But because they end up doing 2 different waves of this. But at one point they did Lobo and Howard the Duck. Oh. And so it was Lobo the Duck. And so my familiarity with Lobo came more from that kind of stuff. Because when I was a kid, I primarily got my comics on the newsstand.
Okay.
Going to a comic shop was a major luxury. You know, it was like, oh, my parents are actually going to, drop me off at a comic shop for a little while today. Woo. Because I've done something really, really good to deserve this. It wasn't something that you just got to go do, But Century, on the other hand, carried X amount of comics. And as long as I was busy, doing this or that, bucking hay or whatever, then I could, afford to go buy all of them. But they didn't, for the most part, carry comics like Lobo. I'm not stating that, it wasn't on the newsstand at all.
Yeah.
Just not in the area that I was.
Yeah.
So, I was familiar with who the character was, but I never read him as a kid.
Ah. Yeah, I apparently played with him as a kid, so.
Yeah.
I never read who he was till now. Was there ever any, like, Lobo animated series or Lobo movie? Because I could have swore I saw, it might have been a fake trailer.
He appeared in either Superman or the Justice League at one point in time.
Like the animated movies or
the animated cartoon series. Yeah, I think.
Okay.
Could be totally wrong, but
I don't know. I think I saw it must have been. It could have been a fake, like on just scrolling through Facebook or something. It looked like a fake like movie poster, but
was it the one that had like The Rock as Lobo?
No, I saw the one with The Rock as Johnny Bravo though, and I think he could totally do that. I just want to know how they're going to make his legs super small.
Digital effects.
Oh yeah. But no, it could have been The Rock as Lobo.
Well, there was a fake movie poster going around for a while of The Rock as Lobo.
That's cool. Yeah, it was probably that then.
Yeah, and they did have a Lobo movie, at least rumored.
Oh, like
I don't know if it was ever actually confirmed. I don't think it ever got to the work stage.
Oh,
because DC's movie universe kind of a little bit of a mess. But
very true.
But anyway, so that's something you'd recommend to check out, and I haven't checked that one out yet, so I should do that.
Which one?
The Lobo.
Oh, the
paramilitary Christmas special.
Yeah, the paramilitary Christmas special. Yes. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I really have to find it. I didn't realize how big my stacks of comics were. They're pretty huge, and like I organized them. So right when I organized them, I don't know where anything is because I don't know, for some reason, like I can just like reach into a pile and pull out the one I want if it's completely like random, or I just put them away. But if I organize them, I'm like, crap, where did I put that again? Why is it on the bottom? Who did this?
Yeah, Trinity's been working on organizing hers over the past week, and
I might get a new bookshelf, so that's going to be helpful.
Yeah, I could see that. I still need to work through all these in here. You can probably see.
Yeah.
So, speaking of Trinity, I got a little segment featuring Trinity, where she's talking about some of her favorite holiday specials. So we're going to go ahead and play that now. I have with me right now Trinity Watson from the Kids Review Comics podcast.
Hello.
You're here right now to tell us about some of your favorite holiday comics. So what do you have for us?
Generation X, Holiday, Spectacular, and Special.
Okay, by the Spectacular, do you mean issue number 4?
Yes.
Okay. Go ahead and tell us what those 2 issues are about.
So, issue number 4 is, I don't know what happens in the issues before.
Okay, so you haven't read issues number 1 through 3 yet? Okay, fair enough.
But I'd like to. The team Generation X is trying to get into Faybrook, Maine. I'm guessing it's because I don't actually know why they're going to.
Okay, so it's something that started out in issue number 3.
I think so.
Who wrote Generation X issue number 4?
Scott
Lobdell
and Chris Baccello.
Okay, Chris Baccello was the artist on it.
Oh.
I think he did plot those as well, though. So they're heading to a town in Maine.
Yeah.
And then what happens?
There's a roadblock where a bridge should be, and the cops make them turn around and go back. But in reality, there is no bridge. I don't know why.
Okay.
So when they get to Faybrook, there's this orphanage place, and
oh yeah, the orphan maker and Nanny are part of it, aren't they?
Yeah.
I'm beginning to remember this issue. Okay.
Yeah. There's this building surrounded by police, and it's an orphanage. The building is an orphanage, and there's a mutant kid inside.
Okay.
He's not a mutant with powers, but he's, I guess, disfigured, you could say, maybe.
Okay.
Like, his appearance is different from other children.
Okay, is he actually a mutant?
In the sense of powers, no.
Okay, but is he like the Morlocks, where he's got a mutation that disfigures him?
Yeah.
Okay.
I think so.
Okay.
I think that's what's going on.
Okay.
But people think that he's taking the teacher and the kids hostage. I don't know if he is or not. I don't think he is on purpose. Because all the kids are willing to leave, but the teacher stays because he's willing to stand up for this kid.
Okay.
And he gets a heart attack and dies.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah. His heart was weak.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so what's the Christmas element in this issue?
There's not really a whole lot of Christmassy stuff. I think it's just because it's like the month of Christmas.
Okay.
That's a Christmas spectacular.
Okay.
Like
they call it holiday spectacular, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So then the next issue is the holiday special.
Yeah.
Okay, so that was a Generation X one shot.
Mm-hmm.
So it's called Generation X Holiday Special. And that came about a little bit later on in the Generation X run.
Yeah.
So who created that one? Who are the creators on that?
Joseph Harris.
Joseph Harris, okay.
Uh-huh.
And have a co-creator or not?
Not that I saw.
Okay. Wow, Joseph Harris is a great comic talent. I don't know what he's done recently, but unless I'm mistaken, if I am, I'm going to edit it out. He was the writer on Bishop the Last X-Man, which was one of the greatest X-Men side stories of all time, in my opinion. So, okay, tell us what this one is about.
You learn that Jubilee hates Christmas. Jubilation Lee, who... Wasn't she originally part of the X-Men?
Yes.
Yeah. You find out that she hates Christmas, but...
Okay. Do you know why she hates Christmas?
I think it's because, one, her parents died on or near Christmas, or two, Santa couldn't bring back her parents.
Yeah.
They're gone.
I remember something about that.
And
I haven't read this issue since I was about your age, but I remember it quite fondly.
Yeah.
So, okay. Go on.
So, there's this kid, and he's a mutant. And he stays up on, like...
Not a member of Generation X, so he's a new mutant? Okay.
He's a new mutant. Not part of the New Mutants.
Right.
As far as I know.
God, X-Men can get confusing. Okay, go on.
And, he stays up all night on Christmas night, like Christmas Eve, and he traps Santa using his powers.
Okay.
And then Orphan Maker bursts in.
Okay, so this one has Orphan Maker in it as well?
Yeah, and from what I understand of Orphan Maker, I'm pretty sure he's just a kid in a huge, like,
He
suit.
is. Nanny has made him into that.
Yeah.
In fact, if I remember right, and I could be remembering this totally incorrectly, because I haven't read these issues for years and years and years.
There's always
But I think there has been more than one Orphan Maker. I think that Nanny has created more than one over the years. Because I think the X-Men might have freed the kid at one point. Nanny and Orphan Maker are old X-Men villains. Yeah. That they brought back for Generation X, if I recall right. Or maybe they were X-Factor villains. They appeared at some point. I remember that. So anyway, go ahead.
Jubilee, she sees Orphan Maker and, like, she follows him. And she follows him to this kid's house. And she stops Orphan Maker from killing this kid's parents.
Okay.
But the parents are knocked out for a long time. And sees that Santa is sort of stuck in a chair because of this kid and his powers. I don't think it gives an explanation to what his powers are. I think it's like telepathy.
Okay, he's probably telekinetic.
Yeah, telekinesis, telepathy, something.
Telekinesis, move things with your mind. Telepathy, read other people's minds.
Telekinesis.
Okay.
I think. I'm not actually sure.
Okay, fair enough.
He beats up some kids, though, earlier in this issue.
So okay.
I think he trapped Santa because he wanted to know why he was different from our kids, if I remember right. And at the end of the issue, Jubilee, like, still doesn't exactly believe it's Santa, but Santa tells her that he knows who's mutant and who's not, and then she asks him if he's a mutant, and he says, "What do you think?" and then leaves.
Okay.
So
it implies that Santa might be one of the oldest mutants there are.
Yeah.
Okay.
So that's that holiday special.
Okay.
One shot.
And wasn't the tagline to this issue, "Yes, Jubilee, there is a Santa Claus"?
Yeah.
Yeah, I thought so. Thought I remembered that. So which of the two did you like the best?
I like the one shot the best.
Okay, the holiday special.
Yeah.
Okay.
But then again, I don't know much of the actual storyline for it.
Okay.
I know the characters, but not the storyline itself. But it's a storyline I want to get into at some point. So I don't know if there's much more to go.
Okay.
Or not.
So we're not going to do the art writing skill on these since you're not doing a review. We'll go ahead and do a recommendation skill.
Okay.
So on a scale of 1 to 10, 1 being the least, 10 being the most, how highly would you recommend this?
For people who really like the older stuff that Marvel did, I'd give it like a 9.
Okay.
For people that aren't as used to like the Excalibur series or the older X-Men series, I say to go back and read more of stuff with the older X-Men in it.
Okay.
Or else you won't know some of the characters in it, like Jubilee. You won't know who she is, and there's some other appearances in Generation X further along the line. But I'd really recommend this to people who'd be interested in reading the older storylines. So
overall, you give it a 9 in terms of recommendation level. Okay. And is this the only holiday specials you've read in comic form so far?
No, I think I've read 2 others, but it was a couple years ago.
Okay.
So.
And these are your current favorites?
Yes.
Okay. So, Generation X was something that came out about, I think it stopped production probably 2 or so years before you were born, something like that. So how do you get into a series that's as old as this? How did that happen?
Well, if you're me, then you have a father who's a comic writer and who loves stuff like this. But I guess how other people would get into it is that, like...
No, I just want to know how you get into it.
How I got into it?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, my dad, Adam Watson, is a comic writer, and he likes the older X-Men stuff. And he wanted to introduce his children.
So I introduced you to it, in other words. Okay, fair enough. All right, well, thank you for coming on to the main podcast, Trinity.
Thank you for letting me on this.
Okay, so our next segment for the Christmas episode is going to be an interview I recently conducted with my good friend Elizabeth Guizetti about her holiday issue of her comic Out for Souls and Cookies, which was issue number 4. Out for Souls and Cookies, if you haven't read it yet, is about 2 demons who want to take it easy but don't have a retirement package since there's no retirement package in hell. So they come to Earth in the guise of 2 puppies so that they can get souls and eat cookies and just lay around for the most part. So Out for Souls and Cookies is a fantastic comic. I make a cameo in issue number 5, which is briefly mentioned in this interview. So let's go ahead and play that interview. I have as a special guest Elizabeth Guizetti, the author of Out for Souls and Cookies.
I have also done Famine Lands and Lure, and I just finished illustrating Prince of Artemis 5, which is a short story by Jennifer Brozek, and that will be coming out next year.
So the topic of this podcast is going to be Christmas issues, and you are one of the few comic creators I know that's done a Christmas issue for one of your comics, Out for Souls and Cookies number 4. Let's talk about that. What made you decide to do that?
Well, honestly, even when I wrote the first issue of Out for Souls and Cookies, which I didn't know would do as well as it did, because I kind of did it as a break from my more serious work, like Famine Lands. And when I wrote the first book, after I did that first issue, even after that first issue, I knew I wanted to do a Christmas special. I mean, the story's about demon dogs. and so I just knew it had to have a Christmas special.
Yeah, that makes total sense to me.
Yeah.
I've been wanting to do a Christmas special for my characters forever. Trying to find the right one can be pretty difficult. One thing that stands out quite a bit to me when I read Out for Souls and Cookies issue number 4 is you're creating an actual new Christmas story. You're not just retelling a Christmas Carol or The Night Before Christmas or any of the things that people normally do when they write a Christmas special. So
one of the reasons I did write my own story was because I wanted it to be thoroughly modern and also something that you could imagine that these characters, Rosie and Tycho, would actually be going through. You couldn't really see them as Scrooge or as, I suppose you could see them like attack Santa if Santa showed up, came down the chimney or something. But it didn't quite make sense to retell a story. It made much more sense to have them, to think of what are some of the Christmas traditions that we do in our home. And one of those is always to go to the parade. And that's how the book starts out, is the parade. And then what happens to the next part for what would Rosie and Tycho, the characters, actually be doing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I half expected them to attack Santa when they're sitting on his lap, asking him for ideas for presents for Lord Fluff. Is it Lord Fluffcakes?
Yes, Lord Fluffcakes.
Lord Fluffcakes, yeah. So, do you want to give a brief summary of what that issue is about?
So, as I said, starting off at the parade, which happens the day after Thanksgiving, Rosie and Tycho are talking to each other, and they're like, we need to go Christmas shopping. It's Black Friday. Let's go out into the world. And so they go do that, and they're looking specifically for a gift for Lord Fluffcakes, who is their regional manager of Hell, and who is the one that is constantly telling them, you need to make your quotas. You need to make your quotas.
Mm-hmm. And Lord
so
Fluffcakes
also
talks to them through a chew toy.
A very specific gift for a demon who is, possessing the chew toy. So,
right.
What do you buy for that person? And that's what the story's about.
So this particular issue is quite a bit nicer than what some of the other issues are.
Yeah.
They don't attack Lord
Christmas.
Fluffcakes at all. They don't do anything like that. They don't even take any souls in this issue, do they?
No, they do not.
So what made you decide to do this nice of a story?
Well, first of all, I love Christmas, and I love, I've been watching, Christmas movies since Thanksgiving's been up, as my tree has been up and everything else. So I actually like the idea that Christmas is a happy time, and it's a time, we'll talk a little bit about the Christmas Carol, where, that people can be nicer to each other, and that people want to be nicer to each other, and it's a time of giving, and it's a time of wonder. And so I always knew that I was going to do a happier issue. I also would say that I don't think Rosie and Tycho are just villains. I mean, they do steal people's souls. I admit that.
Right.
But they also do show active caring about other people, and they do show caring about each other. And so this idea that they're, at best, I would just say they're morally ambiguous. And in this time of year, they're friendly.
Right. Okay. That makes total sense to me. So, Out for Souls and Cookies ended with issue number 5, is that correct?
That is correct.
And issue number 5 has a cameo by someone.
Yes, you actually are the cameo. You make a deal with the devil.
Right.
And the truth is that I'm going to be making a graphic novel version of, the 5 issues are the main story, and there's not going to be more than that, but I am going to bind them together and make them into a graphic novel.
Okay.
And in that, there will be a 6th story that's like a frame story, and that's going to be all about that Rosie and Tycho feel that I have slandered their name, and this is the totally true fantastic story of Rosie and Tycho.
So this is a real life Rosie and Tycho in that story?
Well, they're going to still be comic book characters. but yeah, Rosie and Tycho, they're 14 now. They're tired of everybody thinking they're demons. So they're going to set the record straight in the graphic novel. And I'm hoping that will be out next year. But I am not at the level of where I could really announce it. But yeah,
okay.
the 5 issues are the main issues. And then there'll be a short little, additional story in there. So people who enjoyed the series still feel like the graphic novel gives them something more.
Okay, yeah, I look forward to that. I'll definitely be picking that up. And I own all 5 issues of the comic, so,
yes,
that's saying something.
No. And I also appreciate that, you were so willing to be in the comic.
Oh, anytime anyone wants to draw me in a comic, they're more than welcome to, especially if I'm making a deal with the devil for my soul, so. So, why aren't you continuing the story past issue number 5? Is there any particular reason?
Well, the only real reason is I always felt like there's two reasons. First of all, Rosie and Tycho are getting to be 14, and they don't necessarily do cute things anymore.
Okay.
I mean, really, Rosie sleeps 23 hours a day.
Right.
Which the truth is the Rosie in the comic book would too if you let her. And then Tycho, other than playing with his ball, doesn't really do much either, just because they're getting so much older. Right. So that's a little bit of it, is like, what else would I write about with the dog? Like, where would we go? Because we can't take long walks anymore. That inspired me when I first wrote the comic. And the other reason is Maria Masterson, who worked with me on that project, has, really focused on being a stay-at-home mother, and she has 2 children, and she's busy with her own life. And there was some magic spark I always felt with Maria when we wrote the comic. But without her, I don't feel like the jokes were as great as they were, because she knew when to shut me off.
That makes sense.
And so, so I don't know. I'm not saying they would never be more. I'm just saying for right now, that's not like a good idea.
Okay. So who knows, 10 years down the line, you might want to revisit it. But at the moment, this is what it is.
Yes.
So what do you have coming out in 2018?
So for sure, I have Princess of Artemis 5 coming out in the spring. And then I'm working on a series of novellas. People may remember that my first book was a book about elves. And I've always loved elves, and I've always loved morally ambiguous characters. And I had written a novel to go along with the Familylands comic books. But it didn't end up being, it never really fit, so I never released it. And now that I've, have a couple novels done and a couple comic books done, I realized it shouldn't be part of Familylands. It should be its own thing.
Okay.
And so I am releasing a series of novellas. The first 3 will come out in 2018. And then the next 3 should be out in 2019.
Okay. How are you releasing those?
Oh, just on Amazon. These will be self-published works.
Okay. On Amazon as digital downloads, as physically printed books?
I'm sorry. I didn't understand the question. Both as ebooks and as paperback novellas.
Okay. So you've done quite a bit of writing in sci-fi prose work at this point, and in comics.
Yes.
And you're one of the few of us that does sci-fi cons as well as comic conventions. So what are the differences you notice in doing those two things?
Well, the science fiction conventions and or the fantasy conventions are much more focused on the literary aspects of what we do, where the comic book conventions are focused on comic books and then other forms of popular media, including television and movies, and so they'll have actors there. And while there may be a few actors at a science fiction convention, that is definitely not its focus. Its focus tends to be very literary. And I would even say, while as a comic book artist I am always welcome there, it really focuses on the books.
Okay, that makes sense. I have yet to be at one of those. All the conventions I've ever been to, a sci-fi show is not one I've been to yet. But which is actually pretty astounding, because I've been to like 400 conventions at this point. Do you have any conventions coming up?
I have no idea how many conventions I've been to at this point.
I have a rough guess. I know the only one that I really kept major track of was in 2010, because I did 42 shows and signings that year.
Wow.
I always keep track in terms of I have it all written down. I have the amounts that I made, what it cost me, all that kind of stuff. But that's the year that I actually really paid attention to. So do you have any conventions coming up in 2018 that people can see you at?
Yeah, I will be at Emerald City Comic Con for sure.
Okay.
In the Artist Alley. And then I will be at Norwest Con in the Writers Row for sure. I have had, they're no longer tentative. They are for sure. I've been confirmed.
Okay.
And then I should also be at in the fall. I should also be at Jet City, and it is quite likely I'll be at Oricon, which will be for sci-fi.
Okay.
But other than that, I don't know my whole 2018 schedule yet.
Fair enough. I don't think anybody's firmed up their con schedule quite yet. I know I haven't. So
Yeah.
But then again, I didn't really set a con schedule for 2017. I just kept buying tables at places and showing up. So, all right. So, if people want to learn more about you, about Out for Souls and Cookies, or any of your other works, where should they go?
The best place to go is elizabethguizetti.com.
Do you want to spell that out?
Yes. ELIZABETTGUIZZETTI.com.
Okay. And I'll also put that in the show notes.
Okay.
Is there any social media places they can find you?
I am always on Twitter, and in fact, Twitter is actually, of all the social media, and if you want to contact me, Twitter's the best one, and it's at E_Guizetti.
Okay. Do you have an Instagram, anything like that?
No.
Okay.
I have a Facebook page, but that one, it's elizabethguizetti.author.com.
Mm-hmm.
And then I signed up for Tumblr, but you'll never find me on that. If you really want to contact me, go through Twitter. I'm on Twitter a lot.
My Tumblr auto feeds from my Instagram. So I only have to post on Instagram, and it auto-populates both Facebook, Twitter, and Tumblr.
Oh.
Which is actually a pretty nice feature, because then I don't have to worry about hitting up all of them, you know?
Yeah.
But if it weren't for that fact, I don't think I'd have anything on Tumblr. It's my lowest social media site for people interacting with the profile.
Yeah.
And I don't know why. It actually has a pretty nice layout, but maybe people are on Tumblr for a different reason.
I just thought of one other.
Okay.
I do, if they're an author and they'd like to see some of the videos I've made for authors and comic books, like how to do a convention and stuff like that, if they go on YouTube, I've made some videos about how to run an author table and other questions that authors tend to ask me a lot.
Oh, I didn't know that.
And it's also just under my name, Elizabeth Guizetti.
All right. Well, I think that's good for right now.
Okay, great.
But hopefully we can have you on the show again in the future, maybe for a longer interview.
Sounds good.
Thank you.
Thank you for having me.
So, Adam, do you have a Christmas special issue that you would like to discuss, or that you have in mind?
You mean one that I've done myself?
Oh, well...
Is that what you're asking, or are you asking things that I want to recommend?
Oh, I was thinking about things you recommend.
Oh, okay. Okay, perfect. Because I am working on a Christmas special issue.
Very true.
But it won't be out until 2018. So.
Yeah, and no spoilers.
So, yeah, I've actually read quite a few Christmas specials that I'd recommend. But my favorite one of all time is probably the Awesome Holiday Special. Yeah, it's called Awesome, because that was the name of the company. Because Rob Liefeld was the owner of this particular comic company. And if you've never heard of Rob Liefeld, he's the guy who puts 1.5 billion pouches on everything. He was the original artist behind Cable and Deadpool. And if you've ever seen the original designs, they have like 40 billion pouches and these guns that are huge and all this stuff. And so he created these characters, Youngblood, and which are kind of like exactly like X-Force, except for they're more extreme. And X-Force themselves are just, a more extreme version of the X-Men. So,
they're just getting more
so originally, Rob Liefeld had this company under Image that's called Extreme Studios, right? And it's a long, sordid history that, you can research out on your own at some point. But Rob Liefeld was kicked out of Image at one point in time. Now he's back in Image. But at one point in time, he was kicked out. And he was one of the original founders. And when he got kicked out, he switched over from Extreme Studios to Awesome. So, sorry. But anyway.
So the Awesome Christmas Special, was it?
The Awesome Holiday Special. So there's this thing where even when it's Christmas within them, they're almost always called holiday these days.
Yeah.
Which would make a lot of sense if they were doing like Christmas and Hanukkah.
Yeah.
Something like that. But they're almost always just Christmas, so I don't get why.
They're trying to be politically correct when there's just Christmas anyway.
Yeah, I don't get that, though, because if it was just Hanukkah, there wouldn't be anything wrong with just calling it a Hanukkah special.
Exactly. Well, I mean, it's like the iconic movie, The Christmas Story. The holiday story?
Right.
No.
So anyway, this issue featured 4 different stories in it. I no longer have the issue. I wish I did, but years and years and years ago when I bought my house, I sold much of my comic collection and all of my issues of the Coven, which I would have considered this one to have been one of those, went along with it. But part of the reason this is my favorite, it has a lot going for it. Like, one of the lesser known works of Alan Moore. Do you know who Alan Moore is?
Sounds familiar. But...
Watchmen, V for Vendetta.
Oh, yeah.
From Hell. Okay. And, you know, he's the one who famously hates movie adaptations of his comics. Alan Moore worked in the beginning part of Awesome, writing a character called Supreme. Took him from being like just kind of a third-rate version of Superman to actually giving him a lot of depth, and really and truly made him a lot more like Superman. But was like, oh, okay, this is what Alan Moore would do if they just let him do whatever he wanted to with Superman, right? But he took the Team Youngblood and got very little chance to write him, because one of the things Rob Liefeld was really known for back then, and maybe still is, I don't pay attention to his career anymore, to be completely honest, but one of the things he's very well known for is releasing 1 issue of something or 3 issues of it and it never being seen again, right? So it sucks, because there's some really good Alan Moore stuff in there with Youngblood, which he was completely relaunching, revamping. It's got a Youngblood story and a Fighting American story. Fighting American was like, okay, so there's a whole story behind that too. So Joe Simon and Jack Kirby created Captain America, right?
Yeah.
I couldn't tell you what decade exactly, but at some point in time, they got mad about the fact that they didn't own the character. And so they had created this kind of knockoff of their own creation. It was called the Fighting American. And I've never read the Fighting American comics, so I guess I shouldn't say it's a knockoff, but he visually looks like a knockoff of Captain America, right? Well, fast forward years and years and years, and in the 90s, Marvel was failing to get readers for the Avengers, Captain America, Iron Man, Fantastic Four. So they signed a contract with Extreme Studios, which was Rob Liefeld's, like we discussed, and Jim Lee's Wildstorm, to have those characters put in their own little satellite universe. It was called the Heroes Reborn universe, and redone under their creative direction. Okay. And basically they, you know, this would bring in a lot more sales, so on and so forth. Well, it did create more sales, but people really don't like Rob Liefeld's art anymore. Well, I guess I shouldn't say people. There's still plenty of people who do. But it didn't work in the context of that, I guess. So Marvel ended up giving the whole thing over to Jim Lee by like issue number 6 of the 12-issue run, right? Rob Liefeld felt slighted by it. When Awesome had started up, and I don't know all the details, there's probably more to it than that, but when Awesome had started up, he had started using material they had created for Captain America with a new character that they were calling Agent America, and he was basically the exact same thing as Captain America, right? So Marvel, of course, takes him to court. And in the midst of the court battle, it's like, hey, there's this character called Fighting American, and he's or Fighting America or something like that. And he was basically created for this exact reason. So that Agent America character, slap a new name on him and redo his costume to look a little bit more like this, right? Marvel had kept the lawsuit up, but they lost because, as it turns out, while Fighting American wasn't published by Marvel originally, they had reprinted some of the material for Simon and Kirby at some point. So that was like the smoking gun. Okay, you know, you allowed this to exist, so Rob Liefeld can publish it if he's got the permission of Simon and Kirby, right? Yeah. It had a Fighting American story in there, and that stuff was actually pretty good because, like, one of the series was done by Ed McGuinness, who is known for doing a lot of the early Deadpool ongoing series with Joe Kelly. A lot of it's done by him artwork-wise, and his artwork fit really, really well for that. It's really too bad Awesome didn't produce more stuff. the best mini in it, in my opinion, is a Coven short. And Coven is this team. They're not superheroes, but, it's got kind of superhero tropes. They're this team of, there's a demon on the team, and a witch on the team, and a vampire on the team.
Okay.
And so they're trying to stop a descendant of Cain. Okay. And the artwork in it is just absolutely beautiful. It's Ian Churchill.
All Coven or just
all of the Coven that was done by Ian Churchill.
Okay.
There are some covers that are done by Rob Liefeld that are, in my opinion, not very good. And then later on, Avatar Press.
Need this many buckets.
Right. Avatar Press had started publishing it later on under license from Rob Liefeld. The artwork in that was, they only released like 4 of them, I think, but the artwork was pretty varied. It was there was some really good art, but I don't think it fit with what the original story was, with Ian Churchill. Yeah. But this is one of the stories that actually managed to come out, and it's this nice little tell, because Scratch, one of the main characters in it, is a priest that is possessed by a demon. So he's not 100% demon, but he's not really a good priest anymore either, right? Yeah. But he goes back to visit the church that he used to be the priest at. Yeah. And if I recall right, the altar boy that served under him is now the priest there. Okay. And they have a potter's grave out back for the man he used to be. Oh, okay. So he's sitting there visiting his own grave. And, it's just a nice little story and quite different than most things that you get holiday-wise. So that is probably my absolute favorite of all the holiday specials I read. I picked one up earlier this year I quite liked in the dollar bins. There was a Comico Christmas Tales, or Christmas Stories, and it was an anthology. All the stories in it were written by the same guy, with various artists, and one of the artists on it was Bill Willingham, who is best known as a writer for Fables, right? Okay. And the stories in that ranged from weird to goddamn bizarre as shit. So, so it's like everything from a man who kept himself frozen 11 months out of the year and only thawed himself out to be alive during Christmas time, and been doing this for like 1,000 years or something like that, to aliens discovering Christmas. It's like it really it had quite the range of different types of stories in that. So I think that one is worth at least a single read.
Oh, the humans are extra plump this time of year. It's Christmas for us too,
right? And then Beth, who I just interviewed a little bit ago, she actually released one of my favorite Christmas comics. And part of the reason why I like all 3 of these the best, because, I've read a lot of issues that have Christmas things in them, right? But they're almost all It's a Wonderful Life, The Night Before Christmas. Yeah. Or Christmas Carol, right? Mm-hmm. I don't think there's anything wrong with redoing those stories. They're timeless, and you can fit several different characters into them. Oh, yeah. But there is something to be said for people actually trying to do an original Christmas story. You know what I mean? Yeah. So I like that all 3 of these are an original Christmas tale.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. So anyway, those are my recommends.
Well, like with Lobo, as I mentioned earlier, it's like that kind of Christmas special. It's like, it's not every Christmas special you get to kill Santa. Like. Right. And it literally had
very messed up.
It had nothing to do with like giving presents or, they were getting ready for presents, but it didn't, it was just completely its own idea. Like, I'm pretty sure there's another story out there about someone killing Santa.
Oh, there's probably plenty of them. Yeah.
But yeah.
Yeah, and if we're going to recommend anything outside of comics, I don't know if you have anything to recommend. But if you get a chance to check out, I think you probably have to find it on DVD, because I looked on Netflix and Hulu. Maybe it's on Amazon. I don't have Amazon streaming service. But if you get a chance to check out a movie called Santa Slays this holiday season, check it out.
I'll have to look for that, because that sounds awesome.
It stars a wrestler in it, I believe, if I remember right, Goldberg. I'm not perfect with my wrestler knowledge, so, if it turns out to be one of the others, forgive me, but I'm pretty positive it's Goldberg.
Well, and like half of them are bald with a goatee.
Right, so it could be Stone Cold Steve Austin. Yeah. But I think it's Goldberg. So, the short and sweet of this is that Santa is actually Satan. And he has been forced to be delivering presents and doing nice things for like 2,000 years. Oh, God. But now those 2,000 years are up, so humanity is fucked. And during his origin story, and it's all done in like a Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer claymation style.
Like, wait, the whole thing, or just
no, his origin style, okay. His origin story. So it's like in the middle of the movie, it all of a sudden just turns to this claymation, Rudolph style, done actually very well for such a low budget movie. And all his elves are actually demons who have been, like forced into the same sort of servitude as he has been. And it's a fucking great movie. It's B-rated shit, but
sometimes like the story needs to get out. You can't afford it, but it needs to get out.
Yeah, and I like the tradition. It came out years ago, but just like doing horror Christmas movies, I think is awesome.
Oh yeah,
because the first slasher movie ever made was a Christmas movie.
Really?
Yeah, Black Christmas predated Halloween.
Oh wow.
Yep.
Might have to check that out too.
Oh yeah, you should check that one out. You have any recommends for things people should watch? It, of course, doesn't have to be horror.
I know, but now it sounds so appealing. I don't know. Haven't really sat down and like had that many like Christmas marathon movies. I mean, obviously there's like the classics like Home Alone. I always enjoyed that. Yeah, I can't really think of one. I know I have one. It's just escaping my mind at the moment.
Fair enough. Yeah, so we're going to go ahead and wrap this up because we still have Christmas shopping and all that kind of good shit to do. And we will be off next week. We're going to go ahead and take a break for Christmas week, but we'll be returning the very next week. So the next episode is going to be our 2017 wrap-up, and it's going to deal with the products that we actually managed to get out this year. We've already covered the conventions, but I'll be discussing the expectations for Kickstarters, what was actually accomplished, the expectations for how many products it would get out, what was actually accomplished, where El Bovine Muerte sits, because that had sat without any movement for years, but this year that changed. So I'll be discussing that, what the expectations were, what the actual accomplishments were, what worked, what didn't work, all that kind of good stuff. So that's what'll be happening on our next episode. So that's it for today's episode. Thank you for listening. We hope you have happy holidays. I'm Adam Watson.
And Elias Spainhower.
Thank you for listening.